We're focusing on risk assessment this morning with a special zeroing in on internal factors. So, Crystal Howell is with us. She is a chartered professional accountant and a certified internal auditor. Good morning. Good Monday morning.
Good morning. I'm so happy I'm not the only accountant in the room today.
Not today, not
Oh.
today. Today we have some other representatives from ICAB
Yes.
here, so we'll get to hear about that awesome week that is
Very
planned for you
awesome.
guys.
Very awesome.
So tell us about these things. Well, before we get into risk assessment, there was one thing you wanted to reiterate because we did mention it, but perhaps persons missed that. Last time you were here and you were talking about the ease of setting up a small business.
Yes.
Perhaps certain things were misunderstood about what it takes to do so.
Yes. So setting up a small business in terms of registering the name and making sure that you're VAT registered and you're paying your taxes and liabilities is a separate process to if you want to incorporate a business, especially if you want to get involved in an initial public offering, which could involve lawyers and legal fees and setting up corporate documentation, which is a much more expensive venture, and it has a lot more technical issues, and you must definitely get all of your professionals involved to make sure you've dotted your I's, crossed your T's, and that you've set up your business in the way that you're looking to do, as opposed to what you may borrow from some other person's business and then it's not specific to what you may want, or you may not have all your legal infrastructure in place properly. So if you're going to be doing that more technical process, you definitely want to get all of your professionals involved.
So you start with an attorney that understands business setup,
Exactly.
and you're on your way. Costs a bit more, and it takes a little more time, but
Yes.
it gets you the effect. Because I remember us mentioning specifically too that also offered a certain kind of protection,
yes.
if your company had to be
Yes.
sued.
So if you have a corporation, you will have limited liability, which means that you only be sued up to what your business has, as opposed to your personal assets being at liability. So as a sole trader, if your business runs into problems and you're not set up as a limited liability corporation, that means that your personal assets could also be at risk. So this is why some persons take the effort to set up their businesses in this way.
Okay, all right. So that was more of an external kind of risk
Yes.
that you would have covered as we looked at the pestle system. So now we're looking at risk assessment from an internal perspective. So what do we need to know about this?
Well, risk assessments, as I said, focus on what is happening within your organization. So you have different processes and different accounts that you would want to look at to see what your objective is, and that is where your focus will always be. What is this particular process or area trying to achieve? And as long as you start with that, then everything else pretty much falls into place. So let's say, for instance, you have your objectives with regards to cash, and you want to make sure one of your objectives is that your cash is safe, whether it is the physical cash that's on your premises or the cash that's in your bank account, whatever form of cash it may be, your objective is to make sure that it's safe. So the next thing you would do is to look at what could possibly go wrong with this particular process, what are the risks, what can happen to make sure to prevent your objective from happening. So we sit down, we go through this analysis, and we say, well, if I have, for instance, we love to go to our nice fish and chips shop. If you have cash on the premises and you're working late at night, there's a possibility that some person could come and rob you. So when you think about all of those things that could go wrong, you could have an employee who decides that they need the money more than you do. You can have a lot of things that can go wrong. Then when you identify these things that could go wrong, the next thing you want to do is to look to see what can you put in place to make sure that these things either don't happen, or that you minimize the loss, or you transfer the loss to someone else. So those are then the kind of processes you will go through for each and every area within your business to be able to determine what would then be the residual risk, which is the leftover risk, that you are happy with or that you are comfortable with as a business owner. So using the same cash example, let's say you decided to use lock boxes so that when you have them at night, the person, you might need 2 keys to be able to get into it, and another person has a key off-site, so that even if somebody comes to rob you and it's bolted into your business area, it's going to be a lot more difficult for the person to say, go into your cash register and take out all of the cash and be able to walk away with it. So you can see then how you would then go backwards in terms of putting things in place to mitigate those risks, reduce them, minimize them, or pass them on to be able to achieve the initial objective that you would have had for your business.
And this should be a consideration with whatever size the business.
No matter the size of the business, this is something you need to do. Of course, if it's a large corporation, then you have a team who will be coming up with these things, and you will have all different perspectives coming in. But many small businesses don't have that benefit of having a team of expertise to be able to sit down and say, let me see if I've taken everything into consideration for this process so that I can make sure that I reduce my risk. But it's still an important exercise that you should at least start and have a foundation for.
Okay. It strikes me that in these times, cyber safety would be important as well.
Yes, and that is one that if you have ever heard of COSO, which is one of the many, many accounting and audit.
And the smile broadens.
COSO focuses a lot on those kind of things now. We had a framework, an older framework that did not take a lot of those things into consideration, but the new framework, it focuses a lot on fraud and IT considerations, which would not have previously been part of the conversation.
Right.
So this is what I mean when you say you don't sometimes have access to a lot of different perspectives and expertise, because many of these things you break down, you have different auditors for these different things or different accountants for these different things. But you sometimes as the sole trader or the sole owner, you have to be able to think of all these things. What is my risk if I go online? Can somebody hack me and steal all the money from my bank account? What happens if I'm with someone that doesn't have insurance and they can't recoup that money? What if, what if, what if? So if you keep asking yourself those questions, you always assume the worst that can happen.
So you're prepared for it.
Exactly.
As can be, at least.
As prepared as you can be, because the more controls you put in place, there's a cost.
Yes.
And your business may not always be able to support the cost of all these controls.
Excellent, though. We've started the conversation on the internal risk factors that you have to look at and prepare your businesses for. So we will continue this over the next few weeks with Crystal Howell, who is having a wonderful kind of week as a member of ICAB, and you're going to hear more about what they'll be getting up to later. But Crystal Howell is a chartered professional accountant and certified internal auditor.